Chuck Norris passed away on March 20th, 2026. And in the days since, one name keeps coming up in every tribute: Bruce Lee. For decades, Norris spoke about Lee, on camera, in interviews, in private. But now, for the first time, the full story is coming to light. In this video, we're uncovering what Chuck Norris really revealed about Bruce Lee, the night they first met, the fight that cemented their legendary status, and the private conversations that fans have been dying to hear for years. This is the exclusive truth you've never seen before, and it might just change everything you thought you knew. To understand what Chuck Norris eventually revealed about Bruce Lee, you have to understand who Chuck Norris was before Bruce Lee ever entered the picture. And the answer might surprise you. The man who became a symbol of toughness across the world started life as a shy, unremarkable kid who never stood out at anything. Chuck Norris once described himself as the shy kid who never excelled at anything in school. His father was an alcoholic who all but disappeared from Norris's life after his parents divorced. At the age of 10, Norris moved with his mother and brothers to California. He attended North Torrance High School. He was not a fighter. He was not a leader. He was, by his own account, a kid without direction. Norris married his high school sweetheart, Diane Holacek, in 1958. The same year, he joined the U.S. Air Force. He almost joined the Navy at 17, but his mother insisted he finish high school first. Because his mother wanted him to finish high school before enlisting, he had time to rethink his choice of military branch and joined the Air Force instead. That decision changed everything. At basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, young Carlos became known as Chuck Norris, a new name given to him by a fellow airman. From Texas, he was sent to Arizona for a year. Then came the assignment that would redirect his life. In 1958, Norris joined the United States Air Force as an air policeman and was stationed at Osan Air Base in South Korea. There, he acquired the nickname Chuck and began training in Tang-Soo-Do. The story of how he found martial arts is a detail Norris told many times. While stationed in South Korea, Norris joined the base judo team, but quickly found it wasn't for him. Then one day, while walking through an alley, he discovered a dojo practicing Tang-Soo-Do, the Korean art of empty hand fighting. Even with an injured shoulder and in a class full of black belts, he took to the art. He trained under Grandmaster Mun and Jae-Chul Shin at Osan Air Base. In a statement, Chuck Norris confirmed that Grandmaster Mun was one of his teachers many years ago. Grandmaster Mun was one of several Korean black belts I trained under, but Jae-Chul Shin was my primary instructor, said Norris. After returning to the United States, he continued serving as an air policeman at March Air Force Base in California. In August 1962, he was discharged from the Air Force with the rank of Airman First Class. Now a civilian, Norris needed a job. Norris applied to be a police officer but ended up on the waiting list. While he waited, Norris decided to open a martial arts studio in his town of Torrance, California, which led to his opening a chain of studios. He started to enter martial arts competitions. The early competitions did not go well. Norris lost his first two competitive bouts, dropping decisions to Joe Louis and Alan Steen, and later lost 3 rounds to Tony Tulliners at the International Karate Championships. But he kept training, he kept competing, and he kept getting better. Norris won his first World Middleweight Karate Championship in 1968 and continued to hold the champion title for the next 6 years. In 1969, he was named Fighter of the Year by Black Belt magazine. By the late 1960s, Norris had opened more than 30 karate studios. He taught several celebrities, including Priscilla Presley and actor Steve McQueen. He was the most decorated American karate champion in the world. He was on top of his sport. And then, at a tournament in New York, he met a man who would change the entire course of his life. That man was Bruce Lee. The story of how Chuck Norris met Bruce Lee has been told from several angles over the years, but the core details remain the same. Chuck Norris first met Bruce Lee at Madison Square Garden in 1968 after winning the World Karate Championship, and the two ended up working out in a hotel hallway until 7 in the morning, sparking a 2-year training partnership in Los Angeles. According to another account, the two first met at the 1967 All-American Karate Open Championships at Madison Square Garden. Norris won the championship that year, while Lee appeared to give a special demonstration of his martial arts talents. Whether it was 1967 or 1968, the key detail is what happened next. The two met at a karate tournament in New York where Norris was competing. Lee approached him afterward and asked if he'd be willing to train with him. Think about that. Bruce Lee, a man who was already known from the Green Hornet, a man who was already developing his own fighting philosophy, walked up to the reigning karate champion and asked to train together. The two men started talking, and a long discussion about their respective fighting philosophies led to a no doubt epic corridor sparring session that lasted until 4 a.m. The two forged a friendship and even trained together in Lee's backyard in Los Angeles for 2 years until Lee moved back to Hong Kong. This was not a casual acquaintance. This was two men meeting regularly, testing techniques, pushing each other, and learning from each other. And they did not always agree. Lee and Norris argued over their different fighting styles. with Norris preferring the high kick and Lee never striking above the waist. Eventually, Lee added Norris's high kick style into his repertoire. That is a detail that often gets overlooked. Bruce Lee, the man who founded Jeet Kune Do, incorporated something he learned from Chuck Norris into his own method. Having sparred multiple times with Lee, Norris had a strong understanding of Bruce Lee's fighting style, breaking this down in an interview with Physical Arts. He was very fast, Norris explained, adding he learned from everybody, he had a very open mind. Bruce never believed in only one style, or one style is the best. He felt that there were so many best of everything. He said that everything had strengths and weaknesses, and what he wanted to do was find the strengths and use them. Norris, for his part, was always direct about what made Lee different. He told Black Belt magazine, "The truth is, Lee was a formidable opponent with a chiseled physique and technique. I totally enjoyed sparring and just spending time with him. He was as charismatic and friendly in the ring and at home as he was on film. His confidence and wit were dazzling and sometimes even debilitating to others. Lee was lightning fast, very agile, and incredibly strong for his size." Now, it is worth noting that while Norris always spoke highly of Lee, Lee was not always so diplomatic in return. As late as 1970, Lee was aiming fire at Norris, stating in an interview that he would be able to handle national karate champions Joe Louis, Mike Stone, and Chuck Norris, almost as a parent would a young child. He explained that his superiority would be somewhat disconcerting to watch. That is Bruce Lee being Bruce Lee. He was not a man who lacked confidence, but what is telling is that Norris never took the bait. Good friends and professional partners, Norris and Lee had a competitive feud, much like any eager sportsperson, though Norris never let this cloud his judgment of the man himself. Their training partnership lasted about 2 years before Lee moved back to Hong Kong to begin his film career. But the connection did not end there, because one day Norris got a phone call that would change both of their careers. When Bruce Lee started making films in Hong Kong, he was already a sensation. The Big Boss and Fist of Fury had broken records. For his next project, The Way of the Dragon, Lee wanted to do something no one had done before: film a martial arts movie in Europe and pit his character against the most credible opponent he could find. When Lee was casting Return of the Dragon in 1972, he called Norris personally and asked him to play the villain Colt, the fighter who would face Lee's character in the film's climactic scene inside the Roman Colosseum. Norris told this story many times. In a Q&A with Combat Culture, he recalled the conversation. He held the world karate title at the time, and he had one question for Bruce. "Who wins?" "I win," Lee said. "I'm the star of this movie." Norris pushed back. He pointed out that he held the world title. Lee's response was immediate. "No, I don't. I want to kill the world champion." That was the deal. Norris would fly to Rome. He would play the villain, and Bruce Lee's character would kill his character. The filming itself had a story that Norris would later reveal. The fight scene of The Way of the Dragon was filmed illegally because the team did not have the proper permits. Lee had to bribe some of the officials, which allowed the crew to film on location for about an hour before they were required to wrap things up. According to the biography Bruce Lee, A Life by Matthew Polly, Lee and the crew had to bribe Roman officials and sneak cameras in using bags, pretending to be tourists. This gave them only a few hours, meaning that parts of the fight had to be shot elsewhere, but they are one of the few movies to ever genuinely film inside the Colosseum. The 5-day fight scene they filmed in Rome became one of the most iconic sequences in martial arts cinema history. Lee honored his promise. When his character finally defeats Norris's, he drapes the karate uniform over him and places his belt across his chest. Even in victory, Lee's character showed respect to the fallen warrior. That detail mattered to Norris. Norris also loved telling the story about the chest hair. "There's a scene where I throw Bruce to the ground and he grabs the hair on my chest and he pulls it out," Norris recalled. "I get a letter from this man and he says he and his son had seen The Way of the Dragon 26 times. He says, 'Did Bruce really pull the hair out of your chest? If he did, you're really a stud.'" The film was a massive hit, made for just $130,000 and originally intended solely for Asian audiences. After a huge success in the US, it made $130,000. The film grossed over $5.3 million at the Hong Kong box office, beating previous records set by Lee's own films, The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, making it the highest-grossing film of 1972 in Hong Kong. For Chuck Norris, the film was the start of his screen career. The film is credited with launching him towards stardom. For Bruce Lee, it cemented his status as the biggest action star on the planet. The two men had created something that would outlast both of them. But what fans cared about most was a question that had nothing to do with movies. The question was simple: in a real fight, who wins? For over 50 years, the debate raged. In martial arts forums, in barbershops, in comment sections around the world, the question was always the same. If Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee fought for real, who would win? The fight between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris in the Roman Colosseum became one of the most iconic cinematic sequences of the 1970s. It made both of them icons and raised a classic pub question which will likely be asked for eternity. Who would win in a real fight? The phrase Chuck Norris fights Bruce Lee continues to trend in 2026. Driven by viral videos, social media debates, and renewed interest in martial arts legends, short clips, edited fight scenes, and AI-generated matchups have fueled confusion among younger audiences. Despite the growing buzz, historical records remain clear. Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee never had a competitive fight in real life. They sparred, they trained, they pushed each other, but they never fought in any formal or competitive sense. Lee and Norris remained friends and occasionally sparred with one another, but despite popular belief, they never actually fought one another competitively. So how did Norris handle the question? For years, he was evasive. Chuck is often asked whether he would have defeated Bruce in a fight, but he never really gives a serious answer and remains coy on the subject, perhaps not wanting to disrespect his good friend. When Black Belt magazine pressed him on whether he would have beaten Lee in a real competition, Norris gave a response that was pure Bruce Lee. He said, "You'll forgive me for answering with another Bruceism. Showing off is the fool's idea of glory." That quote said everything and nothing at the same time. Some people read it as Norris suggesting he could have won but did not want to boast. Others read it as Norris honoring Lee by using Lee's own words. Either way, it was not a straight answer. But then came the dinner conversation. Years later, someone secretly recorded a dinner conversation in which Norris was asked who would win in a real fight between him and Lee. His answer was immediate and unequivocal. According to multiple reports, Norris unequivocally stated that Lee would emerge victorious, acknowledging Lee's unparalleled skill and talent. That was it. After decades of dodging the question, after years of giving diplomatic answers that could be read both ways, Chuck Norris said it plainly: Bruce Lee would win, not in a movie, in a real fight. Now, some people will argue that this was just Norris being gracious. Some will say he was protecting Lee's legacy. Some will point out that Norris was a world champion in competitive karate, a proven fighter in sanctioned bouts, while Lee had no formal competitive record. Those are valid points, but what matters is that Norris chose to say it. He chose to put his friend above his own ego. Chuck Norris spent decades being asked about Bruce Lee, and he never seemed to tire of it, because the friendship, by his own account, was one of the most meaningful of his life. And there is another part of the story that reveals even more about who Chuck Norris was when it came to Bruce Lee, what happened after Lee died. The last time Chuck Norris saw Bruce Lee alive was over lunch in Los Angeles. A few months after filming The Way of the Dragon, Lee called again, this time to say he was coming to see his doctor. He'd been getting dizzy and passing out. They had lunch, and Lee reported that the doctor said he was like an 18-year-old kid and couldn't explain the symptoms. Lee returned to Hong Kong. A few months after that, he was gone. Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973 at the age of 32. He was 32 years old when he died of cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, believed to be caused by a reaction from different pain medications he was taking, although theories of foul play persist. Norris attended the funeral in Seattle. Chuck was a standby pallbearer at Bruce's funeral. What happened next is a part of the story that Norris told on several occasions, and it speaks to the kind of man he was. Norris attended the funeral in Seattle. When Lee's widow Linda decided to move back to California, she found a home half a block from Norris's house, and Norris spent time with their young son Brandon, telling him stories about his father. That is Chuck Norris after the cameras were off. Not the meme, not the roundhouse kick. A man who sat with his dead friend's son and told him what his father was like. A man who made sure that Brandon Lee knew who Bruce Lee was, beyond the movies and the legend. Brandon Lee would go on to become a star himself, before his own tragic death on the set of The Crow in 1993. The Lee family endured 2 losses that no family should have to bear. Meanwhile, Norris built a career that stretched across decades. While Norris continued acting, friend and student Steve McQueen suggested he take it seriously. His second lead, Good Guys Wear Black, in 1978 became a hit, and he soon became a popular action film star. He went on to star in Missing in Action, Delta Force, Outside the Midsommar, Code of Silence, and dozens of other films. As an action star, Norris had a degree of credibility that most others could not match. Not only did he appear opposite the legendary Bruce Lee in 1972 film The Way of the Dragon, but he was a genuine martial arts champion who was a black belt in judo, 3rd degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 5th degree black belt in karate, 8th degree black belt in taekwondo, 9th degree black belt in Tang Soo Do, and 10th degree black belt in Chun Kuk Do. Then came Walker, Texas Ranger, the CBS show that ran from 1993 to 2001, and made Norris a household name to a generation that never saw his films. Then came the internet memes, the Chuck Norris facts, that turned him into something beyond a human being. But through all of it, whenever anyone asked about Bruce Lee, Norris gave the same answer. He spoke about Lee with respect. He spoke about their training sessions, He spoke about the Roman Colosseum and the chest hair, and the phone call about the dizzy spells. He never wavered. Chuck Norris died on March 19, 2026, at the age of 86. His family announced his death in a statement posted on Instagram, saying he had passed suddenly. Norris was hospitalized in Hawaii on Thursday, and his family posted a statement Friday. The tributes came from everywhere. Sylvester Stallone said, "I had a great time working with Chuck. He was all-American in every way." Dolph Lundgren posted, "Chuck Norris is the champ. Ever since I was a young martial artist and later getting into movies, I always looked up to him as a role model." Arnold Schwarzenegger posted, "Chuck was an icon. I'm grateful that I was able to work with him in multiple ways over the years." Former President George W. Bush issued a statement. He was a legend in Texas and beyond. Through his foundation and his example, he made a huge difference in the lives of young people by instilling character and discipline through martial arts. His daughter, Danielle Norris, said, "He may have a warrior exterior, but his heart was so full of love." And that is the truth Chuck Norris revealed about Bruce Lee. Though it was not a single statement made in a single moment, it was a lifetime of statements. It was the admission that Bruce Lee would win a real fight. It was the refusal to diminish Lee even when Lee himself had trash-talked Norris in interviews. It was showing up to the funeral. It was moving near the family. It was sitting with Brandon and telling stories. It was 50 years of answering the same question without ever getting tired of it. The truth Chuck Norris revealed about Bruce Lee is that their bond was real, not manufactured for cameras, not exaggerated for publicity. Two men met at a martial arts tournament, trained together in a backyard in Los Angeles, fought each other in the Roman Colosseum, and then one of them died at 32. The other one spent the rest of his life making sure people knew what kind of man his friend was. While the idea of a real fight captures imagination, history tells a different story, one built on respect, collaboration, and cinematic brilliance. That is what Chuck Norris wanted people to know. And now that he is gone too, we have to carry the story forward for both of them.